By now, I'm sure you have heard some of these taglines: the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset, and the Great Narrative. And of course, you will own nothing and be happy. And I'm sure you've seen the face of this guy being praised as a visionary who will guide our world into a prosperous future. But what does that really mean? And what is the World Economic Forum's plan for the world in 2030? Will it be a world of increased inclusion, equity, and freedom for all? Or, as many people fear, will it be exactly the opposite? I'm not here to answer that question, but what I would like to do is propose a hypothetical future scenario. A scenario that the WEF is promoting and the type of world we could be living in by 2030. A world where your property, your identity, your money could be owned and controlled by your government. To make my case today, I am going to be speaking about what I believe could be the three main pillars that surround the World Economic Forum's agenda for 2030 and discussing some of the things that they are promoting around the now famous event called the Great Reset. Before I start though, I just want you to keep two things in mind. Number one, the World Economic Forum and the leader, Klaus Schwab, haven't been elected by anyone. Yet despite this fact, they are trying to influence politics all around the world in order to transform the planet that we live on. Secondly, all of the resources that I'm sharing in this video are coming from verifiable sources, many of which are directly from the WEF's website. If you want to confirm any of the information, there is more info in the description. So let us discuss the three hypothetical pillars and how it might affect our lives. Pillar 1. Surveillance. The first pillar in the 2030 agenda is the possibility of total surveillance of every single one of us. And the way the WEF could achieve this is by us requiring a new form of identification. The World Economic Forum suggests that every single person on the planet will receive a new form of digital ID, which they say would help promote a world of inclusion where everyone has more access to basic services. But they also suggest this ID could be linked to absolutely everything in your life. It could be required to book plane and train tickets and track where it is you're going. This digital ID would be needed to access social media, the internet, bank accounts, and even a requirement in order to spend your money. And without your ID, it's possible you may not be able to buy anything at all. And who would control your digital ID and the data it contains? Well, of course, your government would. In short, absolutely every action you take in your modern life could be tracked by this new type of personal ID. What your online habits are, where you go, what you buy online, what you say online, and so much more. And if you think this kind of a system is a little bit worrying, well, you're not the only one that thinks this way. Just recently, Kenya's High Court ruled a digital ID system to be illegal in the country because they fear it could be abused by the government in order to violate a person's basic right to privacy. But the WEF doesn't agree. They think it's going to do more good than harm. But anyway, where would you be carrying this new form of ID? Well, according to the WEF, you could be carrying it inside your body. In his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, Schwab talks heavily about how RFID chips could be used to track goods and packages around the world, enabling our economy to become significantly more efficient. But in referencing the same technology, he also said this: in the near future, similar monitoring systems will also be applied to the movement and tracking of people. He also says that the fourth industrial revolution will lead to a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities. Echoing this on the website, the WEF discusses a future where electronic implants could become a relatively normal part of human life. Lastly, I want to mention something I've spoken about on this channel before, which is in regards to the WEF's potential forecast for a future of surveillance, which comes from an article published on Forbes, which is written by a WEF contributor. The article is titled, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better." And the line I want to highlight is as follows: "Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy, nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know somewhere everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. I just hope that nobody will use it against me." To be clear, this article was written by Ida Auken, who is a Danish politician and also a member of the WEF, writing as a contributor for the World Economic Forum. So this is pillar number 1, surveillance. And later on, I'm going to be talking about how the world of surveillance ties in with pillar 3. But for now, let's talk about the second pillar, which is finance. Pillar 2, finance. The next pillar of the Great Reset agenda could be around finance, and more specifically, putting more control of money and assets in the hands of the government. So you know the line, you will own nothing and you will be happy? Well, this is the pillar where this could be playing out. In multiple articles on their own website and elsewhere, the WEF predicts a world where people will no longer own most of the things they use in life. Instead, through a sharing economy, items like clothing and cooking equipment will be owned by your government and delivered to you when you need them. But according to a WEF member, sometimes you won't even need to decide what you need, because an algorithm that knows your tastes better than you do could make these choices for you instead. And your home? Well, soon that could be owned by the government as well, but you won't have to pay rent because someone else will be using your space when you're not there. In short, everything that you own now could soon hypothetically be owned by your government. But the most important tool, asset that you have, which we use every single day to exchange value, which is money, seems that the WEF might have a plan for that as well. The WEF talks heavily about how cash in the modern world is risky and how it should be replaced by digital money. And even though statistics show that many countries around the world would prefer to use cash over electronic forms of money, the WEF believes these people just don't know what's good for them. Instead, they believe we should all be switching over to electronic payment systems as it's the way of the future. So, what could replace a world where we no longer have any kind of physical money? Well, the next step would be to develop a secure digital currency that everybody can use. It's kind of like crypto, except the future digital currency proposed wouldn't be decentralized. It would be completely controlled by your government. And this is called the Central Bank Digital Currency, or CBDC. A CBDC would be fully trackable, traceable, and a secure form of currency that, like Bitcoin, lives on a blockchain. But it would be also fully centralized. It would be money controlled by those in power instead of being in the hands of the people. With a CBDC, your money would no longer be held in a bank account either. Instead, proposals suggest cutting out what they call the middleman, with your government becoming the bank that directly holds your money for you. Nations like United States, Brazil, China, Canada, Germany, Austria, and Australia are already at certain stages of research or developing a CBDC, meaning we may be only a couple of years away from this becoming a reality. But potentially, most worrying of all, a CBDC would also be fully programmable, meaning your government could place whatever rules they wanted on your money, potentially allowing you to only spend your money on the items that they deem appropriate, or even worse, cutting off your access to your money altogether. In short, it would become the perfect tool in order to track and control your money, the very thing that we need in order to survive in today's world. Scoring. Finally, the last part of the WEF's hypothetical plan for 2030 is scoring, basically ranking human beings against each other based on almost every single action that they take, and this is called the social credit system. Simply put, it is judging how good or bad of a citizen you are based on almost every single thing that you do in your day-to-day life, rewarding people who are doing things that the government likes and punishing people that do the opposite. Sounds depressing? Well, there is already one place on Earth that has implemented this system.
China.
Today, China has already the world's most restrictive social credit system. It's a system where citizens are ranked based on almost everything they do in day-to-day life, from how long they play video games to how well they drive, what their shopping habits are, and whether they buy too many luxury items, and especially what they say online as well as who they associate with. If a person's score gets too low, they can lose access to things in life that many of us would argue are human rights. Things like a passport, bank loans, or access to putting their children in a good school. And if your score gets low enough, there are even reports the governments can come and take your dog away. Only a few years ago, China was already banning upwards of 20 million people a year from buying a plane or train ticket because their social credit score was too low. And guess who is a big fan of China's system and the country's current leader? You guessed it, this guy. Klaus Schwab recently gave China's president a glowing introduction at World Economic Forum event and praised Xi's leadership as well as his nation's economic achievements. Don't like the idea of a credit score? Well, unfortunately, they soon could be coming to a country near you. The first social credit system in Europe is set to begin rolling out in Italy later this year, and the Australian city of Darwin has also proposed one as well. A social credit system like this would neatly slot in with the surveillance pillar, and it would make the scoring of every individual very easy, because if we all have digital IDs, we could easily be scored on our every action. Now, I personally believe that the very idea of a social credit system is disgusting. Pinning humans against each other and ranking them based on their behavior? No, thank you. But whether you feel as strongly about this issue as I do or not, there is one thing that really can't be argued with: that a system like this would eventually mean that the government would control the people and how they live. It would mean that people would have to act the way that the government would want them to act. And those that don't toe the line, they would lose their rights and privileges. Financial privileges, economic privileges, and basic human freedoms. To me, this sounds like the perfect way of controlling a population and removing everybody's individual free will. But hey, maybe that's just me. I'd love to know your thoughts. The conclusion. In the end, these three hypothetical pillars seem to be pointing to one eventuality: absolute control. The control of people by tracking their every move. The control of a society by locking down its access to money and the things they need to survive. And the control of an individual's behavior and choices with a restrictive social credit system. And to me, it does seem like the WEF is promoting things that could make this kind of a system a reality. As I said at the start of this video, I really want you to make up your own mind about what you believe is going on. But as you do, just remember this: the WEF is an organization that none of us have elected. An organization that is funded by some of the richest and most powerful companies that have ever existed. It's an organization that is installing its young global leaders in political cabinets all around the world to shape the laws of our nations. And seemingly, it's an organization that thinks it knows better than we do about the individual choices we should all be making. Personally, I want to live in a world where I get to make my own choices, that I get to decide what I want to do and what I enjoy, and not having some government or algorithm deciding this for me, where I get to say what I want, where I get to associate with who I want without the fear of having some imaginary brownie points taken away from me, and where my financial future is still in my own hands, so I can decide if I want to buy or own things that bring me joy. I could be wrong, but it seems that the WEF doesn't want this for us. So do tell me again, who elected these people in order for them to dictate the kind of future that we are going to be potentially living in? Not me, and I guarantee not you either. So let me know your thoughts below, and stay tuned for more on this topic very soon.